Greetings from Burundi, Central Africa. I'm Paul Guinness and I'm out here with my wife Alison and our two lovely children, Jeremy and Grace. I've been asked to speak to you about a time to get into God's Word. For me, this is not a time for academic study of heavy commentaries. For me, it's about desert times. What do I mean by desert times? Times when the distractions, both in my head and the busyness of life, are pushed aside and I can seek God. There are also times when I'm desperate. Times when, whether I'm physically exhausted or spiritually or emotionally drained. They've been times at different times of my life when I've come to God desperate. I've meditated on his word and beyond expectation he's answered me. Desert times might be intentional, Sabbath times where we choose to go out into the desert to separate ourselves off, perhaps fasting. Other times have been desert times that God has brought about. They might be struggles, they might be crises. One of these came when I was working as a youth worker in Camberwell, London. I felt socially isolated. I was working antisocial hours. I was just after university trying to work out where my career was going, and youth work wasn't working out. My boss, who I had looked to for guidance, was slipping into a breakdown with alcohol addiction. I remember learning Psalm 107 off by heart and repeating it every night for weeks. As I look back, I can see how God has answered the prayers of Psalm 107. From verse 4, some wandered in desert wastelands, not finding a way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distress. He guided them by a straight path to a city where they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for men. God has brought me to a wonderful place, both in marriage and my career. That's another story. There are three more stanzas in Psalm 107 that speak of different kinds of crises. The storm where the sailors on a ship are totally overwhelmed, they're at their wits' end. Perhaps that might be those working in the NHS in the last few weeks, feeling overwhelmed, but in that moment crying out to God and seeing his answer. Other stanzas refer to times when we have been rebellious and we feel trapped, locked in by our own mistakes, or foolish and seeing our lives draining away. I challenge you, read them, see what God might be saying. This COVID season is a time when, whether we choose to or whether it's imposed on us, there are opportunities for desert times. I remember thinking about the description in Mark chapter 1 verse 3, where John the Baptist is described as a voice in the desert calling, "Prepare the way of the Lord." When I looked at the verse in Isaiah, there's a different slant on it. A voice crying, "In the desert, prepare the way of the Lord." In Isaiah, written similar time to the Psalms, the people were in exile and they were looking back to the time when God led them through the desert. They weren't remembering the pain and the hardship. They were remembering that those were the times when God answered their prayers, when God spoke, when God was present. They were remembering. May I challenge you to pray God, bring me close to you. If it needs a desert time, I'll give you permission to do that. He's able to organize it, believe me. It may be that you need to have some Sabbath time. It's a time to get into God's word, for God's word to get into us. Thank you.